welcome to the deep dive. Our goal here is always to jump right into the source material, pull out those key insights for you.
Yeah, cutting through the noise, getting to the heart of the text.
Exactly. And today, we're looking at excerpts from Romans chapter 13.
A really interesting passage. It covers, well, quite a bit of ground.
It really does. We're seeing perspectives on how to relate to governing authorities and also how we should relate to each other. Kind of two big themes.
And it connects them in some fascinating ways.
Okay, so let's start with that first part. The governing authorities. It kicks off pretty strong, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities. No ambiguity there.
And the reasoning it gives was foundational.
Uh-huh. It says, there is no authority except that which God has established. Basically, existing authorities are there because God allowed or instituted them.
So the implication is, if you rebel against the authority.
You're essentially rebelling against what God has put in place, and the text says that brings judgment on themselves.
Right. Then it describes the role of these rulers. It says, they hold no terror for those who do right.
But for those who do wrong. So, if you're doing good, the text suggests you shouldn't really fear them.
You might even get commended, it implies.
Because the ruler is seen as God's servant, to do you good.
But there's another side to that coin.
Absolutely. If you do wrong, then you should be afraid, because the ruler does not bear the sword for nothing.
That sword sounds pretty serious, like the power to enforce, to punish.
Exactly. The text calls the ruler an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Still framed as God's servant, but in a different capacity.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. Submission is required not just to avoid getting punished.
Right, but also because of conscience. It's positioned as an internal duty, something you owe inwardly, not just something forced on you externally.
That internal aspect then leads directly into something very practical.
Taxes. This is also why you pay taxes, it says.
Because the authorities are doing their job as God's servants in collecting them.
That seems to be the connection the text makes, yes.
And it wraps up that section with a clear list. Taxes, revenue, respect, honor. Give everyone what you owe them.
It ties all these civic duties back into that framework of ordained authority and submission.
Okay, so from that relationship with authority, the text pivots.
Yeah.
It talks about debt again, but differently.
Yeah, it says, let no debt remain outstanding except
the continuing debt to love one another. Love is presented as this constant, never fully paid obligation.
And then, boom, this huge statement. He who loves his fellow man has fulfilled the law.
Okay, fulfilled the law. How does that work, according to the text?
Well, it explains that commandments we know: don't commit adultery, don't murder, don't steal, don't covet, and so on. They're all summed up. They're all contained within this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself.
The idea being, if you genuinely love someone, you wouldn't do those harmful things to them anyway.
Precisely. It states it very simply. Love does no harm to its neighbor.
So the conclusion is,
therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. It's the principle behind the rules.
Then the passage seems to shift gears a bit. There's this talk about time.
Yeah, understanding the present time. The hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber.
A sense of urgency.
Definitely, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. There's a now is the time feeling to it.
And based on that timing, there's a call to action.
Right. Put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. It's a metaphor for transformation. Shed the old, adopt the new.
It even lists examples of those deeds of darkness.
It does. Things like orgies and drunkenness, sexual immorality and debauchery, but also, interestingly, dissension and jealousy.
So it covers outward actions and inward attitudes like strife and envy.
It seems to cover a broad range of behaviors considered contrary to this new way of life.
And the positive command, what to do.
Clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ. This builds on the armor of light idea, making it very specific: emulate Christ.
And it adds that final instruction. Do not think about how to gratify the desires of the sinful nature. A clear contrast.
Yeah, a contrast between the old focus and the new one.
So, wrapping this up, Romans 13 gives us this picture. Submit to authorities because they're established by God, but also live centered on love, because that fulfills the law's intent.
And it connects things you might not normally connect, like paying taxes and avoiding jealousy under these big principles, all with this sense of timely importance.
It really does tie it all together, which leaves us with a final thought for you listening. The text strongly emphasizes love as fulfilling the law and urges putting on the armor of light by clothing yourselves with Christ. specifically moving away from things like dissension and jealousy. So what might putting on that specific armor look like for you when facing similar kinds of internal or external challenges today?